Hello, everybody. Well, we're back again like the proverbial bad penny. We show up at the weekend and how's everybody in the Xollob Nation? Because anybody who's watching us is a voluntary member of the Xollob Nation crew. Hello, Dan. How are you? How was your week?
Welcome back to Xollob Nation. I'm a bit hungover, Bill. I was drinking the devil juice.
Devil juice? No, there's a few types of devil juice.
Yeah, it's what we all drink on the Côte d'Azur.
Okay.
Fucking rosé. Oh my God.
Oh, but that's a very kind of classy kind of wine, isn't it?
It's pure jungle juice. It just wrecks the head off you, right? Because it's lovely and fresh, and you're drinking it like lemonade. But by God, this morning at 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock in the morning, I wasn't feeling great. But I've recovered. And you know the best recovery, Bill?
Hair of the dog that bit you. Yes, indeed. It is a very well-known cure for everything.
The hair of the dog. But yes, I had a good old week, yeah.
Good man. So, look, we said we'd shake things up a small bit and I would start reading the news a bit more. And
good stuff.
This week, I came across a couple of articles now that are quite funny, really. And look, there's no pun intended with regards to alcohol and drinking and all that. But the first article we have here was from Sky News reported, woman given 14 shots of tequila on a carnival cruise was then awarded 220,000 euros in damages, Dan. Now, so you get 14 drinks and then you get 220 grand in damages for God knows. So basically what the article was saying is it highlights the inherent danger of all-inclusive drink packages, which encourage excessive consumption and pressure underpaid servers to prioritize tips over safety, the lawyer said. So basically what happened was, the gist of the article is that she was on an all-inclusive package. And of course, she was basically having a few drinks, and then she had a few more. And the gist of the article is that the people who serve her the alcohol, she would tip them as she was going along. So if they were chatting to her, so basically the staff were saying, if we keep talking to this lady and tell her nice things, she'll hand over loads of dollars. So, and that's their tip money. So essentially, she was given 14 shots of tequila over a 9-hour period in January, and when she was on this cruise, the Carnival Radiance. And as soon as she left the ship's bar, which the lawyer said that the company was prioritizing alcohol consumption all over the place, because every nook and cranny had somebody selling or giving alcohol. And if you had that little ticket on your hand, then, it was free drinks. But
and did she get paid out?
Of course, she certainly did, more than she asked for. She was later found unconscious in a crew-only area. And the missing surveillance video, obviously somebody tried to hide it, was eventually shown in the courtroom. So the jury in Miami ruled that the 45-year-old nurse, nurses are devils, right?
They're right devils.
They have a bit of a lip for it. But anyway, the jury concluded that the company had acted negligently. And her attorney, Spencer Ahrenfeld, said, taking on a giant like Carnival is a massive undertaking, and I have enormous respect for her resilience to the nurse in question. And it highlights the inherent danger of all-inclusive drinks packages. So basically, Dan, all-inclusive is very, very dangerous. Have you ever been on an all-inclusive drinks package? Yes, so have I.
I have. They're absolutely brilliant, right? So if we're going to... But give me the details, because
right, yeah, so
I'd love to go on that cruise, right? Get absolutely trolleyed for the initial price and then get a payout at the end.
Yeah, I know. Because
I know, right? But no, I'm sorry, no, right? But is that a lot of drink? No, maybe this shows how much of an alcoholic I am, right? But 9 tequila shots, 14 shots over 9 hours.
That's what it's saying. I mean,
is that
wouldn't even touch the sides.
I mean, Jesus, I know some lads who are maybe related to you, Bill, right? They'd be doing that every hour. But I suppose is there a
Tequila.
different?
And I suppose it depends on the measures there, because like whenever when I was in Mexico, the measure was just pour, and if you were chatting to the guy and he liked you, he'd keep pouring.
I know, but I was on a cruise years ago. It wasn't a cruise actually. It was one of these resorts in the Dominican Republic.
Oh yes.
And now I think it's maybe in the genetics of the Irish, right? But when it's an all-inclusive package, and you couldn't give a shite about the food, right? But all-inclusive being the drink. Yeah. Literally, I'd be up at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I'd be having a beer with my with my cornflakes, because you'd be afraid to waste it,
Yeah, you would, because they open at 9 o'clock, so it's good. Because when I was in Mexico on the same kind of a thing, it was the bar opened at 9 o'clock, and the man got to know me after the 2 weeks I was there, and he was like, oh, so it was a martini up. I learned that you do a martini up. Oh no, was it a martini? No, I can't even remember now, but it was strong stuff anyway. So that set me up for the day.
And another thing I'm drinking as well, I love getting a bit drunk in the morning, right?
What's that? We're going to be so cancelled.
It's a lot nicer than being drunk at, I don't know, midnight, right? Midnight.
Yeah, it's very sloppy, like, yeah.
Midnight is very sloppy, right? But first thing in the morning, right? The world
looks better, yeah.
It looks a lot better.
Yeah, and you have the bright light, the sunny coming into your eyes, and you're like, the world is lovely. Oh, very good, very good.
Yeah, but management doesn't like it when you rock up after your 14 tequilas.
It doesn't.
It's not a great look. But I do find I have great ideas after the 14 tequilas at the first team's meeting at 9 o'clock, right? I'm inspirational, actually.
Yeah. And you kind of come up with like,
great ideas.
Why can't we try this? And it's like, wow, yeah, Dan
great
is really on fire. Or Bill is really on fire today. Yes.
So what do you reckon? Right? Is that she was a greedy piggy?
Yes.
She couldn't handle her drink. She should have
fell over.
Relaxed.
Yeah.
So
fell down the stairs or whatever happened to her, but she was unconscious. She busted her head open. Taken to the hospital, all that good stuff. And essentially she decided that the Carnival Cruise Company were liable for her inebriation. I don't know.
No, I don't really know. No. I think, right, I'm sorry, right? You have to take a responsibility, or
personal
at least
responsibility.
If she had a husband or a friend or something, they say, right, Mary,
and in fairness,
Jane,
according to the article anyway, Diana was her name. Diana,
oh my gosh. Diana the nurse.
Diana admitted her personal responsibility. However, the core issue was Carnival's refusal to accept any corporate responsibility for serving someone who was clearly intoxicated. So, she has a point, because to be fair, the barman is supposed to say, Diana, no, you're swiveling on that chair and you're going to fall off. Why don't you just go for a lie down?
Yeah, but how can you tell really how drunk someone is, right? So
if you're a barman, you should be able to. I mean, in fairness, that's part of the deal, like.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm giving that a no, Bill, right? So I think she needs to take responsibility for herself or her pals. She obviously had no friends. But I think she's very cheeky then to try and sue the company.
Yeah, well, she doesn't care. She's 300 grand to the wiser.
Okay, and there'll be a link in the description to that cruise, so we can all try and
we can all join.
We can all lash into the tequila or
double portions
or your drink of choice on the cruise, and you get 300 grand afterwards.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but I'm saying no. Go. I'm saying no to that, Bill.
I'm saying no to that as well, because it's ridiculous. Take some flipping responsibility.
Brilliant.
But the next little article we have is Fatboy Slim was appearing on Desert Island Discs in the UK. It's a kind of an institution where famous people sit down and they talk about their favourite music or whatever. So Fatboy Slim sat down and he admitted that he felt incredibly paralysed at the prospect of DJing when he was sober after he spent a year in rehab. This was around the time he split up with, I think Zoe Ball was his wife.
Zoe Ball, yeah, exactly.
she basically said, listen, buddy, you are on a hiding to nowhere. And I mean, I can understand you're traveling all around the world, you're having a good time, it's a party, everybody's partying, you kind of get sucked into it. So poor old Norman, I think that's his name, Norman Cook, he basically referred to his alcoholism as a kind of a parasite. And he said that getting sober was probably the hardest thing he'd ever done. And he had to address the problem because Zoe was whispering in his ear to say, I will leave if you do not stop drinking. But unfortunately, we all know she did leave, so he didn't stop drinking at that time. So, yeah. And he went on.
She left and he kept drinking, and then
he kept drinking for a while, and then eventually he had to. He said, addiction is such a weird disease, and it's like a parasite. It protects its own. It knows that if you quit, it won't have anywhere to live anymore. So it will do things to you to keep you drinking. So yeah, fairly insightful. You know, like
yeah, I understand. Yeah,
it is there, all right. You know,
it is there. Sure. My God.
Yeah, he wasn't really enjoying his life, and then he got sober. So he had a year with some sober house or whatever, and then he had some contractual obligations. In the first 5 or 6 gigs he had to do, he was absolutely paralyzed, not paralytic, paralyzed, let's say. And,
from fear,
yeah,
basically fear.
Just from, you know, I'd say, yeah, it's hard to know, but
I never got the whole DJ thing. I know, I just never got the DJ thing. Right, they're up there going la la la. Right, I mean, they could have Spotify playing in the background.
I agree.
Yeah, but
because
maybe
all they're
there's
doing
an
is
art.
pressing buttons. But you see, apparently, like the DJ kind of feeds off the crowd and then puts on different types of music for what they're feeling off the crowd, and then they get the crowd, and then they heighten the crowd. I know,
load of shit. But anyway, but Jesus, they make some coin, don't they?
They really do, because like all you have to do is show up. And you don't have a band. You don't have to worry about, let's say, the drummer is not feeling great tonight. You know, Ringo has had a bit of a Ringo, you know, and you know this kind of thing. So
I know.
It's it's a money spinner if you can do it.
Yeah.
But a lot of guys. There was that Swedish creator who he was only 27. The rock star death age is 27. If you're going to go as a rock star, that is when you should go. It's when you're 27.
We've passed that bill, no?
We have, unfortunately. Yeah, we're not rock stars. Huh? Well, we're getting there. We're getting there. Yeah, we are getting there with our music.
It was, in fairness, though. So I never knew, right, until that famous album, right? You know, the Fat Boy Slim.
Yeah.
You know, with the fat young fella on it, right?
Oh yeah.
What was the name of that album? But I just remember the famous picture. And what was the iconic tune?
Right here, right now. Or there was about 4 that came off that album that were absolute.
Now, what an album! And then I was listening to that album on repeat. But then I found out he was actually in the House Martins.
Correct.
And can you sing a song from the House Martins?
The people who grin themselves to death, smile so much, that's about all I know. Yeah. And then there's a few, Caravan of Love as well. In
the Caravan of Love or something. Yeah. That I didn't know the first one. Fair play to you. That was a lovely actual rendition. Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. Yeah. Thank you. But you know, the guy who sang in the House Martins, I can't remember his name. He is so sound. On his birthday, like he does enjoy a drink still. On his birthday, he put, I think, like 90,000 into some. I don't know how he managed it, but he paid for a drink for everybody on a particular date on his birthday. So if he went in, in
on
Ireland,
a cruise,
he got his management to put money behind the counter at certain bars and he's been to Ireland many times. So there was a couple of bars in Dublin, there was one in Cork, and he basically paid over money to say, if anybody comes in now and says, "Wish me a happy birthday," give them a free drink. That was about 2 or 3 years ago. True story. Look it up. Absolute true story.
What class.
What a class dude. What a class dude,
right? It's
a great band.
It's a shame we don't know his name. Yeah. So I knew you were going to talk about Fatboy Slim. Can we do a little AI inspired tune, Bill?
Oh, sure, why
Are-
not?
are
In
you
the
up-
spirit of
are you up for that?
adventure.
Yeah, you
Of
haven't
course we
heard
are.
it.
Absolutely, then.
Yeah, so
Fire on all cylinders.
I got the AI to do a Fatboy Slim inspired tune, right? Now, I haven't heard it to its completion, right? But let's see what it sounds like.
listen.
Here we go.
Here we go. I like.
So it is drink inspired.
Okay. Save your soul. Great bass line. I drink to that.
I recognize that hook.
I do, yeah.
6 drinks deep, I'm the king of the night. Blur in the left eye, blur in the right. Stumbling, mumbling, shouting at the wall. Heavy is the crown before the big fall. Pouring the poison, love and the noise. Boys with their bottles, girls with their toys. But the music has to stop. The bottom has to drop. Put down the glass, let the moment pass. Look in the mirror, see it getting clearer. I am sober. The party is over.
No.
I am sober. The party is over. Fresh air on Hit it up. Save your soul.
It's a very sobering end to that song, but yeah, okay, cool, Grant. Brilliant song, brilliant tune.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so that was Fatboy Slim.
That was a very good pastiche of Fatboy Slim. Really good.
Yeah.
The
So-
bass line and everything was really good. Yeah.
Exactly. And the poor lad he's sobering up, right? So
Yeah.
we wish him all the best.
We do. He's been 14 years sober, so you know
Good
he
lad.
must be doing something right. Like,
Can I tell you a funny story about sobering up?
I do.
So it's about our Uncle Billy. Uncle Billy.
Yes, my namesake.
Yeah.
Who I was called after.
So Uncle Billy, right? Well, he's our uncle, right? Absolute legend. And I remember, I'm not sure if you'd remember, right? Because I was about, I think, 14. No, our Uncle Billy was an absolute character, right? And he lived in a little village called Macroom, which was about 12 miles. What would that be?
Yeah.
Kilometres, 18 kilometres.
It'd be
about.
more of a town now, in fairness. Dan.
It'd
It
be more of a
wasn't
town,
really-
right?
yeah.
Macroom, right? But an absolute character, right? But he eventually was so bad on the drink, right? He eventually had to be hospitalised, and then
Mm-hmm.
he ended up in what was called Tabor Lodge,
Yes,
which would be
which is
the
still on the go.
equivalent of the Priory or the famous one. What's the famous one in the US that all the rich?
Oh, the Betty Ford Clinic.
The Betty Ford Clinic, right? So it would be the equivalent, right? So I remember we went down to see him. So he'd been in hospital, out of hospital, and he was in. Now, Uncle Billy always had the most incredible sense of humour.
Yeah.
And I remember in the kind of the visiting area, we went down to see him like on a Sunday. And
And it's a long old trek. It is out in the middle of nowhere, Table Lodge.
it's a
like.
long old trek, right? But we all trekked down to see him anyway, right? And we were all sitting around this little table with him, right? And it was rarely enough. It was an incredibly hot, sunny day in Ireland, which is rare. So, and the windows were open, and you know there was other lads drying out as well, and their families, right? So, the first couple of minutes it was like somebody kind of had died, right? Because everybody was looking at him sheepishly, right? And Uncle Billy with his sense of humour, right? And he was always a fella to look for an opportunity. So to
For
cut the
crack,
ice,
like.
cut the ice anyway, Uncle Billy said, "You know what? If a fella there in a high-ace van was to, because the window was open, was to back in there with a couple of with a couple of cans of Heineken or Guinness, he'd make a fucking right killing here now today." And we all laughed, so that cut the tension, and we all got on with it, right? Yeah. Fair play to him.
I went to see him in the hospital when he was like really drying out, like at the very early stages, and he wasn't at his best, let's say.
Yeah. Anyway, Uncle Billy.
But he's great now.
He's bloody great
man.
now.
He's the main man now. He's pulled a lot of people out of their stupor.
Exactly, and he's very actively involved, helping lads to sober up.
Exactly.
Yeah, sure. We might have to visit him one of these days.
You're a no. We would be classified as more functioning, functioning.
The functioning alcoholics.
Yeah, exactly.
Right, Bill. You had a third story?
Well, I do. This third one now was kind of a weird one because it's like about a Bluetooth device, and it's from the Huffington Post, and essentially, airline pilots, they have to make sure that everybody's devices are switched off. And according to this air traffic control audio, security came to inspect the aircraft after somebody named their Bluetooth device a certain 4-letter word. I'm not sure what the 4-letter word is, but it is definitely one that shouldn't be used, I would imagine. So that's what he called his Bluetooth connection or his device, let's say his phone or whatever. And the flight departed around 6 for Palma, Mallorca, and they were flying from Newark at 7:37. And then the airline said there were 190 passengers, 12 crew members on board. But according to the traffic control audio, security came and they wanted to look for this Bluetooth device after a certain 4-letter word. And a passenger was posting social media, and then the crew members were being asked to turn off all their Bluetooth devices, but 2 remained on. And the flight just turned around after they had communication with the headquarters in Chicago. So they were evacuated, and they had to board a replacement flight, and that took off, and away they went. But like turning a whole plane around just because you call your mobile CNUT,
I don't get it.
I don't get it either.
I don't get it.
There's very little detail here. This was the latest incident with a United Airlines flight this month.
So what? So he had. So
he'd named his device "See You Next Tuesday" or whatever, or FUCK.
Yeah.
And then because he didn't switch it off, they turned the flight back to Newark and land, and they had to land and then get another aircraft and fly.
Makes no.
It makes no sense at all. The waste of petrol or whatever they use.
Yeah.
No.
Do you know what? I don't have much to say about that. I mean, just.
I don't either, except the stupidity of like wasting people's time and they never found out what it was about.
But sure, nobody owned up, and nobody turns off their phone anyway, right? It was all a load of rubbish
it's
anyway.
Actually stupid. Like, no, it doesn't interfere with the flight, like having your phone switched on.
Yeah, but if you're risking, right? If there is a danger that a plane is going to go down, right, trusting people to. Every person on the flight to turn off their phone or turn off the Bluetooth, whatever, right? That's never going to happen, So it was.
Or you need some kind of kill switch on all devices, or I don't know if you can even do that. But I just thought it was what a weird, bizarre incident.
Bizarre one, right? Very good.
Yeah. So look, Dan, your expertise in AI might come in handy here because. Today in the Sunday Independent, there's a guy called Adrian Weckler. He's the tech editor for the Independent. He was going on about Elon Musk. He's lost his trillionaire status. It lasted a couple of days. And he asked, is the arse falling out of the AI hyperboom? And basically, companies are putting, caps on the amount of AI their tech people can use, and then it's all about this tokenomics, or you have to buy tokens. And personally, I've come across it. I wanted a little edit or a little video. I wanted to make a little video made by AI of the two guys at the going through the shop, and you might have seen it in previous episode. But I paid $1.99 to get onto the system. And then every time I wanted it to do something, I said, okay, make the two little guys walk forward. I had to pay more money. They were looking for like 90 quid off me, and more and more and more. And like all I wanted was two stick men to walk forward and stop.
Yeah.
Like, in all fairness, now, like that. And yeah, the 90 quid is almost what I paid just to have that done. That's fucking outrageous. Excuse my language. What's going on, like?
Yeah, so the word tokenomics is really interesting. So in my job, so I work for a large consultancy company, and so I've got two machines. I've got my work machine, and then I got my own personal machine. In my job, right, to kind of promote some of the services for our consultancy company, I use mainly three models, right? My number one model would be a model from a company called Anthropic, and I use something called Cloud Code.
Okay.
And I have a personal subscription where I pay €220 a month.
Okay.
I pay €260 a month to Perplexity. I pay 150-ish euros a month on, right? So I'm paying about 700-800, right? Now,
and is that expensed by the company, or is that out of your own back pocket?
no.
Like?
So and this is kind of the difficulty that enterprises are now facing. So in the terms and the TNA, the terms of agreement, if you pay for a Cloud Max subscription, right, at €200 a month.
Okay.
In the terms and agreement, right, that company, Anthropic, can... So tokens are basically... So if somebody says, take this PDF of my expenses, of my last 12 months' expenses, build me an Excel spreadsheet and order it by a certain column, etc.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
That would be the kind of prompt that you're giving the large language model, and that prompt is what we call tokens, right? So it's nearly the tokens nearly match per word, not exactly, but and LLMs work. It's basic. It's a statistical machine that kind of matches the tokens to these massive servers running in these data centers. Okay, and the compute that's giving you the response, that's called inference. So there's tokens in what your prompt is, and then the tokens out are your response. Now,
I get it. Yeah.
The reason, so enterprises are very, very sensitive, right? So they have to have a special agreement or an enterprise agreement, and they're actually literally paying per token on what's called an API. And in the TNA for you just using the API, a company like Anthropic are saying, we are not going to capture and retrain our next model on your tokens in and out. So if you had a client, if you were building, let's say, a proposal for a very sensitive client, there could be very sensitive data that's actually going in to the data centers of an Anthropic, and the reply is coming back. Okay, so in a way, your €200 subscription, right, is subsidized in a way, because
I get you. Okay,
because it does cost a massive, massive amount of money. Okay, so I do think there is going to be a massive crash coming in the next couple of months, because if you look at, let's say, Elon Musk, the evaluations for SpaceX, we're talking that evaluation is over $1 trillion. I mean, just write 1 trillion down on a piece of paper, right?
That is
And
like zeros that are like
and
that
then
length.
and then OpenAI, they're looking to do an IPO. That will be close to 1 trillion. Anthropic, close to 1 trillion. So there's a massive amount of money on these IPOs, and that money needs to come from somewhere.
From private, let's say.
Now, if you look across history, right? Because I remember the 1999, 2000.
The .com boom where you just had an idea and they'd throw money at you.
Yeah. So now this isn't financial advice, right? But I do think especially the American stock exchange, the S&P 500, the Nasdaq, there is going to be a bit of pain in that, right? Because I think a lot of that is overpriced, and I do think if you do an evaluation for a SpaceX or an OpenAI at $1 trillion, then how are you going to get that money back? You know?
Yeah, so, how do you get your profit? Or
Yeah, and you're not going to get it back from like Dan spending €200 a month, even though maybe a lot of listeners think that's a ridiculous amount of money. You're not going to get that back, right? You know, so I do think so
maybe a bit of a correction coming,
and the tokenomics is interesting for organizations because if you just think about software development, so the model we use at our company would be, we would, if a proposal comes up to build a new solution for a client, it could be a large bank, an insurance company, a health company, we would compete, let's say, with other consultancy companies for that work. And normally then the work, right, to keep the price down, we would do a little bit of it, what we call onshore, and then the majority of the development testing work would be done offshore in places like India,
Vietnam, or wherever. Yeah.
Now, the actual development of the coding, most coding that I do now is all done by coding agents through using things like Cloud Code or the OpenAI models.
Okay.
And now we're beginning to pivot and think, is spending 1,500 a month in tokens to develop software, are we getting more value from that as opposed to what that would cost from a human developer? And we're kind of at that kind of pivot point where we need to evaluate if people within our organization are using tokens. Are we getting value for money from those tokens?
Oh, I get you. It's like the amount of money is almost getting close to how much your salary, like a software engineer's salary would be. Like, is it kind of in that ballpark?
Exactly, right? So the difficulty that we're beginning to face is, what is the ROI, return on investment, right, on the tokens we're burning to actually produce something? Because you could have some people in the organization who are using the API and they're basically asking it, right? My dog has a tummy ache, right? Right? What's the best medicine for him?
Fucking questions.
Exactly, right?
Yeah.
And that is like, it's like burning tokens. So how does one monitor the kind of the value that you're getting from the tokens? Because it's a real cost. And I'm noticing there is a bit of a backlash in what we call tokenomics.
Okay.
How can you measure the value of the tokens you're spending? Are you getting value or not, right? Because it's not free. Yeah. So
no, because the energy involved in all that compute power and the amount of electricity required to keep it all functioning, I would imagine, is outrageous.
Yeah.
And you're burning forests to produce, like, my dog should eat fucking better brandy cups or whatever brand, you know.
And the thing is, right, so if I look across, so if you look at, let's say, the rise of Google as a search engine.
Yeah.
The cost for Google every time they were onboarding a new client was virtually zero. Okay? Because it was a search engine, right? If you can do search for 100 people scaling to 1,000, 1 million, 100 million, right, was
Yeah.
That cost, right? Okay, it was an incremental cost. But the cost of scaling, of doing the inference, if somebody is talking to a ChatGPT or a Claude, the computing costs to serve up an answer is incredibly more expensive in terms of the energy needed, the compute needed in what we call that inference cost of giving the answer.
I get you. Right.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
that like the bot wants to come across as kind of human almost and give you nice answers or give you the correct. So
tokens,
it has to go through.
Those tokens, which basically is the response to your question, simple question, right? Costs a significant, and I mean significant, more amount of money than the good old days when you were doing a Google search. Intelligence, this intelligence costs a lot of money, and a massive amount of money has been pumped into what like this new dream is, right? This new intelligence, super intelligence, which will come anyway, right? So be it for the good or the bad, it is coming. But there is going to be a lot of pain from investors. Because the numbers, the evaluations are just silly numbers, you know.
And like, how is it that the Chinese can do it like with the deep think, and they can do it for like a fraction of the money that the US companies, like in this article by what's his name, Wexler or whatever, he was saying that the Chinese companies can do it for virtually for nothing. So are they piggybacking on the work that's been done in the US or in the UK, and then just like basically pulling all that information from US sources, let's say, or whatever? They're getting that base information free anyway. Like, why are the Chinese kind of beginning to kind of win this war, or not war? What am I saying? This battle, let's say.
So those open source models, right, would be maybe 6 months behind, let's say, what we call the state of the art models, which would be the latest GPT 5.5, Anthropic's Opus 4.8, right? They would be 6 months behind, right? And they're very clever at doing distilling and discovering what the kind of the parameters are. But they are still losing money as well. So this is a proper war, right?
Okay.
Between the West and the East, right? Now, I do think, and I have a strong point of view on this, right? I do think us Europeans, we need to get our shit together, basically. Now, but the difficulty is, imagine you and me, Billy, right? We give up the podcasting, and tomorrow we decide to take an open source model, let's say a Kimi 2.5. The amount it would cost us in setting up the servers, getting the NVIDIA chips, if you could get them, to set it up, to do just the inference. So the model is open source, you can download it. But to supply the kind of the answers, right? The amount of compute, power, energy would be really, really expensive.
We wouldn't have enough money to even switch the damn thing on, like, basically.
Yeah. So like, I do think even the Chinese are losing money, but they are competing, you know. So I think strategically, like, the way forward is open source models, but it does require a massive amount of money in terms of building kind of the infrastructure to do the inference, right? So,
but like,
it's going to be going to be very interesting. But I think we're entering.
Do we need it? Is it needed? Like, why? Like, what? I understand. Yes, it could cure cancer. You know, it can run through stuff so fast that the human mind can't.
It will cure cancer. It will cure cancer.
But then, like, asking it, do I look better in this coat or another coat that's all digital anyway? Surely, people should be told, go away. That's a stupid waste of resources. Like,
But it's just too late, Billy. Right? It's so once it's like saying, right? It's like saying, okay, we don't need mobile phones. Let's right. So everybody, right, tomorrow
Back to faxing.
Remove. So the minute you've seen it, the minute you've used it, then
so true.
If it's taken away, like for the work,
I want my stickmen to be running around.
Yeah, I mean for my daily work, right? If it was taken away from me tomorrow, I think I would be helpless, which is very, very sad.
It is, because like you are a software genius, like, well,
not a genius, but
you've been there since the start, since the 80s.
Yeah,
like,
I've been at it a long time, right?
A long time, yeah.
But tomorrow, if I had to actually write a piece of software code without something like Claude Code,
you'd struggle. Let's say.
I mean,
you could do it probably.
It's like, right? When was the last time you had to write a letter? I can barely write now. I can barely sign my name. Do you know what I mean? Because we're on a keyboard all the time, you know.
I know, and like I can't copy and paste something that I see. Do you know, like I could with glasses. You know, with the old those Ray-Bans that they have now with Meta, but like copying and pasting has destroyed the world. But yeah, oh my God, it's brilliant, but it's also quite strange as well.
And I probably went maybe too detailed into it, right? But I live and breathe this stuff every day.
But it's good to get, like, from somebody on the inside to hear what you were saying about it, because you hear people in the media waffling on, and they be on Joe Duffy live line, and they think they know. I remember this guy came on Joe Duffy there last year, and they were talking about some virus, and he said, well, look, I found a perfect way for getting rid of all viruses. And he said, Joe, I'm going to give this to Ireland now. It's you press the CTRL button, the Alt button, and the Delete button. And he said, that will solve all your computing problems. Control, Alt, Delete. And Joe was like, God, you're after solving the problem of malware in your system. I was like, oh
Class.
My God.
I know. No. So that's it, Bill.
So that's it. So look, basically, start pulling your money out of the AI companies straight away and start investing in hardware such as Happy Earth aprons, perhaps an IPO, Happy Earth.
Maybe. If I would think about bonds, 5%.
Who was it who said, if I die, I want to come back as the bond market or something? There was some famous person who said that it's just so huge.
He said, if I die, I want to come back as James Bond. It wasn't the bond market. A big difference.
There was a big difference.
But this is no financial advice. But I do think, guys, there's a bit of pain coming in the next 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
Let's hope we've stored the gold in a very safe place. So
very safe place under the bed. Well, Bill, brilliant to talk to you.
You too, Dan. Thank you so much.
We'll wrap it up there, and sure, we'll be back next week. So thanks, Bill.
With more mayhem.
Yeah, and a couple of more stories for next week.
Okay, absolutely.
I liked this format.
And more AI songs, because, it's our thing. And maybe I'll write one next week, actually.
You'll write one next week, right?
Just
send me the prompt. I'll give you the login for mysuno.com. Very good.
Cool. Okay, talk to you later. Cheers, Dan. Take care, everybody, and love you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.